What is up, my fellow andronauts? In this video, I'm going to show you 9 reasons why you might experience low libido. This video is not about the solution for those problems. It's only to give you an indication of why you might have low libido. So when you do test results, you're not left in the dark. You can do these specific tests, see which one is high and which one's low, and then you can address those. So it's just like a roadmap to help you identify why you're experiencing low libido, and then you can dive into that specific part, for example, what's causing your low libido, and fix that aspect. So let's jump in. Alright, so the first one is quite obvious. It's just low testosterone. And libido and testosterone displays a significant association. So the higher testosterone, the higher your libido. But how strong is that correlation? Where's the cutoff? How high do you need your testosterone to be? So there was a study looking at amongst 1,632 men, only 318, which is 19%, reported low libido at baseline. However, the difference in testosterone with low libido was small. Namely, they saw that for each 1 point increase in libido, there was about a 3.4 nanogram per deciliter increase in testosterone, right? And so they looked at a scale of 1 to 14, your libido. So 1 is very bad libido, 14 is optimal libido. And then they looked at testosterone levels on that range of libido scale. And so that would basically mean that, let's say you have the lowest testosterone at a score of 1 and your testosterone 300, that means you would have the highest libido with a testosterone of 347.6 nanograms per deciliter. So the point is that according to this study, yes, testosterone does correlate with libido, but that difference was like really small. And you do actually see this a lot when in different other studies as well. Let's say, for example, they look at erectile function, and as long as you're just over 300 or 400 nanograms per deciliter, your erectile function is optimal. And if you give more testosterone, it doesn't help erectile function even more. So it's almost kind of like that 300, 400 cutoff. You just want to make sure you're over that. If you're over that, then testosterone or adding more testosterone, let's say with TRT, will not necessarily help you. But obviously, if you do it naturally, you will not just increase testosterone, but all of the other stuff that we're going to talk about. So this is why when you optimize your testosterone naturally, you will notice all of these benefits. But when you increase it with TRT, you're not guaranteed to get these benefits. This was another study looking at testosterone and libido. And so the baseline was 430 nanograms per deciliter. And then they did a 2-year follow-up to see like what happened to the testosterone and what happened to the libido. And you can see that as libido changes, drops here, so does sexual activity. And so the biggest drop correlated with the biggest drop in sexual frequency. And so the increase in testosterone correlated with the increase in sexual frequency. And here was sexual desire. Here you can see that the change in testosterone and the changes in sexual desire, again, a decrease in testosterone correlated with a decrease in desire. But very interestingly, that an increase in testosterone does not always correlate that significantly with an increase in sexual desire, as long as you're at a certain point. So there's no dose-dependent increase in sexual frequency with an increase in testosterone. So it almost seems like there's a sweet spot for testosterone, and in this case, maybe it was around 400 to 500 nanograms per deciliter. Seems to be kind of like a sweet spot. If you increase it even more, you might not always experience more of a libido boost unless you eat the right foods and do the right lifestyle stuff. Number 2 is low DHEA. So there's multiple studies looking at DHEA supplementation and libido, and there doesn't always seem to be a correlation or a beneficial correlation between DHEA and libido according to the studies. But most of these studies, they just don't supplement enough, it would appear. So here was a study where they supplemented 50 milligrams per day of DHEA or 200 milligrams per day of DHEA. And you can see that DHEA in the placebo group actually did increase. So this was kind of like the changes of the placebo group. They got a drop from 577 to 500 nanograms per deciliter in testosterone. The 50 milligram per day group got 573 to 584, so it's like an 11-point increase in testosterone. The 200 milligram per group went from 558 to 687. So it's almost like a 230 nanogram per deciliter increase. So it might be that most people just don't supplement enough DHEA to actually see a benefit for libido aspects. So when you take 50 milligrams, you're not guaranteed to get an increase in testosterone. If you take 100 milligrams, you're more likely to get. If you take 200 milligrams, you're very likely going to get an increase in testosterone. But regardless, I want to specifically talk about DHEA and DHA sulfate, not the testosterone increase, because DHEA and DHA sulfate act on its own in the brain as a neurosteroid. It does have pro-libido and pro-mental cognitive benefits. And so low DHEA can cause low libido, and then supplementing DHA in large doses, that's enough, can actually help to increase your DHA levels and help with libido. Now, some people might be thinking like, wow, that's way too much. If you take 200 milligrams, you're going to get a massive estrogen overload. Don't do it. So here they looked at estradiol, and you can see that it went from 17.5 to 13.3. So I was surprised myself that I got a decrease in estradiol. And their estradiol was actually pretty low, given that their testosterone was like 680, right? And then it went to 13. So that's an interesting ratio. It almost I almost want to say they use an aromatase inhibitor, because if testosterone goes up, usually estrogen also goes up. And even the 50 milligram per day group also went from 19 to 15, so they also got a decrease. And then in terms of LH, the 50 milligram per day group went from 2.2 to 1.5, so they got a decrease, whereas the high group, 200 milligrams per day, their LH went from 2 to 2.9, so there was no suppression even with a high dose of 200 milligram per day. And then this 3-ADG is a neurosteroid, the metabolite of DHT, also went up significantly from 8 to 25. So all of this DHEA is converting to androsterone and some of the other 5-alpha reduced steroids, which do have a benefit on libido. Number 3 is low androsterone. So androsterone is created from DHEA, and androsterone by itself also has pro-libido effects. And so in this study, they looked at the cerebrospinal fluid when they gave people testosterone, and they found that androsterone was the main hormone that correlated with the increase in libido. So let's say this was androsterone and this was testosterone in the cerebrospinal fluid. They gave these people testosterone, and the people that got the highest increase in androsterone also got the highest increase in libido. The people that didn't get an increase in androsterone didn't really get an increase in libido. And the way this works is that when you increase your testosterone, more testosterone converts into DHT. DHT can convert back into androsterone. So usually androsterone is made from DHEA. And so here you can see that DHEA did go up slightly in the testosterone replaced group, but I think it's more so that the androsterone was created from the dihydrotestosterone. So here you can see that this was the cerebrospinal fluid, this was the hypogonadal group, and this was the testosterone replaced group. So here's the metabolite of serotonin, actually went down with testosterone replacement. This was the metabolite of dopamine that also went down a little bit with testosterone replacement. Testosterone in the cerebrospinal fluid went up massively, as you can see. Androsterone doubled. Dihydrotestosterone went up about 9-fold. DHEA went up slightly, not really significantly, and then pregnenolone also actually went up a little bit, which is quite interesting. But they did find that the strongest correlation with libido was androsterone. Number 4 is low DHT. And so even with high levels of testosterone, so this was a study that looked at young individuals between 18 and 24. These guys had an average testosterone of 980 nanograms per deciliter, and then they looked at their DHT levels. And for each 37 nanogram per deciliter increase in DHT, they had one more orgasm per week. And the unfortunate thing is that was the only marker they looked at when it came to sexual function. But more DHT meant more orgasms, which means shorter refractory period, which means greater sexual desire and libido. That's usually what it means. So even with high levels of testosterone, DHT still played an important role in sexual function. All right. And by the way, if you would like to maximize your DHT, I have a course on that. A link is in the description below on how to maximize your DHT and 5-alpha reductase. All right, number 5 is high prolactin. So this study looked at reserved libido and the decreased libido in people that was like between the ages of 65 and 70. And people with a reserved libido had lower levels of prolactin than those with decreased libido. But you can see like the prolactin was about a 20 in the people with reserved libido, and then the high prolactin was only about 35, right? So both groups had relatively high prolactin, and even if prolactin was 20, these people had reserved libido, whatever that means, because the average weekly sexual frequency is about once, right? And I think not a lot of people's happy with only having sex once a week. Unless you have low libido, then you don't really care. All right, as you can see, according to this chart, the lower you have prolactin, the more sexual frequency you have per month. And so here was 4 times per month, so it's once a week, with prolactin roughly around 10 to 20. The highest number was about 40 on average, and these guys had less than once sexual frequency per month. So you do not want your prolactin over 10. I would say aim for below 10. It's kind of like the optimal range for libido and erections. Number 6 is low thyroid hormone, and they have found that people that are hypo and hyperthyroid, even if it's subclinical, not like overt hypothyroid, they do have decreased libido. And this is because T3 stimulates the production of testosterone as well as DHT, as well as dopamine and a bunch of neurosteroids. Like thyroid hormones is extremely important for every function in the body. And if you have low thyroid hormones, you might suffer from low libido. So this is suboptimal numbers. When your TSH is over 2, you want your TSH below 2, optimally. You want your free T3 in the upper range of normal. So really when you do a full thyroid panel, you want to look at TSH, total and free T4, total and free T3, because you want to know how much T4 and T3 you're producing and how much of that amount is free. So how much is being produced and how much is free. And then you also want to look at reverse T3, because reverse T3 competes with T3 for binding at the thyroid receptor. So when you have too much reverse T3, there's too much competition at the receptor. So even if your T3 is optimal, but reverse T3 is high, you will have poor signaling because of all of this competition happening. All right, so another very easy marker to look at if your thyroid hormone is suboptimal is your cholesterol and LDL. When people don't have enough thyroid hormone or they are resistant to the thyroid hormone, they end up with high levels of total cholesterol and high levels of LDL, and they can also have elevated blood sugar, like fasting blood sugar, and prolactin and triglycerides. So those are some easy markers to look at to see if you have enough thyroid hormone and if you're sensitive enough to it. Number 7 is stress. Stress is the biggest libido killer. Acute stress might skyrocket your libido because it's acute, and acute stress increases your dopamine, norepinephrine, opioids, endorphins, like all of those things that can make you feel good, give you that rush. It's kind of like when you're speeding with a car and it's like really dangerous. That is stressful, but you feel like this rush afterwards, right? So acute stress might increase libido. Chronic stress will lower your libido. Chronic stress will desensitize your neurotransmitters, cause a dysregulation of your neurotransmitters, tank your testosterone, tank your DHT, cause all kinds of negative stuff. Neuroinflammation. You do not want chronic stress. If you do, try to manage this as best as possible, and this will help to increase your libido. On the flip side, if you're overly relaxed and you're meditating, you're sleeping in a hammock, you will also likely not have a lot of libido because you're overly parasympathetic at that moment, right? You want to have a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic in the middle, where you will have libido, but you're not overstimulated and you're not too much understimulated. You want to be nice in the middle. Number 8 is high serotonin. So this can be because of excessive exercise, can be too exhaustive. You supplement tryptophan or 5-HTP. Drug use like SSRIs, for example, or some kind of antidepressant that increases your serotonin. Or you have a monoamine A mutation. So monoamine A is the main enzyme that breaks down serotonin. If you don't have enough of that, your serotonin will be higher automatically, and then that will lower your libido. Vitamin B2 and copper is necessary for monoamine oxidase to work properly. And then also nutritional deficiencies, as I mentioned, vitamin B2 and copper is kind of like the main ones that help with the breakdown of serotonin. And then chronic stress can also increase serotonin or cause a dysregulation of the serotonergic system. One of the ways to look at this is you do a urinary neurotransmitter test. It's not the most accurate, for example, what's going on in the brain, because there's a difference between what's going on in the body and what's going on in the brain. And what you urinate out is mainly what's coming from the body. But that's one thing that you can do to diagnose if you have elevated levels of serotonin. Number 9 is low dopamine. So this is also, again, like nutritional deficiencies, chronic stress, doom scrolling on social media, sleep loss. Lots of bad stuff can lead to low dopamine. Low dopamine will lower your libido. And this is why dopaminergic drugs like epomorphine, bromocriptine, capragolin are usually recommended for people with low libido. And increasing dopamine is quite easy. You just have to make sure that you eat nutrient-dense foods to provide all of the cofactors and precursors for the production of dopamine. And then you want to keep your oxidative stress low, because oxidative stress depletes the cofactors necessary for the production of dopamine, and it can also oxidize your dopamine into a harmful quinone. And then last but not least, generally don't look at it as individual factors like low dopamine, hyperlactin, those kind of stuff. Think about it as one thing, as you are being unhealthy, right? That's kind of like the biggest thing that really matters for people. Like, are you at a healthy weight? Are you insulin sensitive? Do you have low inflammation? Are you active? Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating the right diet? Like, ask yourself those basic questions. Are you doing the basic things to be healthy, to have high levels of testosterone? If not, start there, right? Do those things instead of jumping to supplements first. Yes, supplements like triplet resistance and Tonkatili will work very well for increasing your libido, but the moment you remove them, your libido is going to go back to normal. So you want to make sure you do the diet and lifestyle to get high levels of testosterone. And if you just want to like cut to the chase, do the good stuff that's going to get you results as fast as possible, do the testosterone course. Link is in the description below. It will show you exactly what to eat, what to do with lifestyle, what to avoid, how much of what, everything that you need to know. That will help to improve your androgens and maximize your libido. Alright guys, so I would like to hear from you. What has mattered the most for you for increasing your libido? Please leave that in the comments below and I will check you in the next one. Cheers.